when I was asked to come and lead this session, my first reaction was, what am I going to come and speak to you about building a brand in the chemist business or in the pharmacy business? And then I thought that let me, just in the limited time that we have, share a few examples. So before I begin, let me make 3 interesting statements that I have lived with as far as building a health service brand like Gurdian is. And I think these apply to virtually every other brand, particularly in retail. The first statement is the value of a company is in its brands. The brick and mortar and the people are fleeting value adds. And I'm saying this basically to provoke a discussion at some stage. The second line is your brand is created from customer contact and the experience your customers have with your brand. And the third one, which from my own perspective is very, very critical, is that brands are like children. They need constant nurturing and care to thrive and grow. And if you ignore your brand, it will die. So when we started Gurdian, we had this big challenge of coming into a market which had 750,000 chemist shops at every neighborhood, in every city, every village. And yet, there was no organized retail, and we had to start making a difference. And when we said, where do we create this difference? One was in the physical parameters of the store, which is give it a similar look and feel, give it an air-conditioned environment, etc., etc. But we said one big problem that is faced in our country is reliability, which means that it is we are in a position where we're in a position where more than 1/3 of the medicines sold in our country are fake. So we took this platform of reliability, which was very, very difficult to communicate. And I used to tell my marketing colleagues, there used to be, and there is a very old paint company in India, which I used to see when I used to work for ITC in the 80s in Calcutta. And this was a brand called Jensen & Nicholson, and their line was, whenever you think of color, think of us. And it was such a powerful branding line for color. And I used to tell my colleagues, I said, if today you look at the purchase decision for a chemist, you invariably go and say, let me go to a chemist, or you tell your driver, go to a chemist and buy me my medicines. And I would tell them, I said, the day we can get the consumer to start saying, go to Gurdian and buy your medicine, we have won. And we are beginning to see that happen. One of the other challenges that we faced was explaining the brand name to our employees. And again, it was very critical for my pharmacists to understand what is a brand. So we have our own newspaper called the Gurdian Health Chronicle. We had brochures, we had leaflets with Gurdian on it. And I would find people would roll their sandwiches in the newspaper. People, on a rainy day, they would stand on top of a brochure with the Gurdian brand written on it. And I would talk to them. I would try to explain to them. I would get upset. But the message just wasn't going through to them that the brand of the company is so important, Till one day I decided there's no point in getting angry. I walked into a shop. I found one of my colleagues behind the counter standing on a poster. So I looked at him and I said, why don't you write your name on a piece of paper? So he wrote his name on a piece of paper. He thought he was going to be rewarded. And he wrote a nice, big, bold name. I put it on the floor and I said, now shall I put my foot on top of it? So his first reaction was, sir, what are you doing? That's my name. And then he looked down and he looked at the name of the company that he was standing on. And I thought that was such a quick way of communicating across the entire chain, which has over 200 stores, that you got to respect your brand. There's another example of how we experienced, how my experience of a brand with the consumer was. In our very first store, a lady walked in, and in those days, even today, when you buy medicines up to 15,000 rupees of medicines is permitted free by the income tax. So she picked up 4,000 or 5,000 rupees worth of products. I was standing outside the counter looking, and my pharmacist could see all the dollar signs in front of him in the first few days. total sale of the store was 10,000. Here was a lady buying for 4 or 5,000. She walked up to the counter, put the products on the counter and said, I want all these. Now give me a bill for antibiotics. So the pharmacist looked at me and I shook my head. And the pharmacist said, sorry, madam, we cannot give you a fake bill. She screamed, she shouted, and she walked out. 2 or 3 days later, she walked back in again, and I happened to be in my store again. And this time I walked up to her and I said, ma'am, we will not give you a bill. And she said, no, the fact that you don't give fake bills means that your medicines are right. And she's been a customer of Guardian for the last 10 years.